today. I'm one of the counselors here at Stagg High School, but I know we have students from our sister schools, Sandburg and Andrew, on here as well. You may have chosen communication for lots of reasons. I know when I saw the slide that you're seeing right now, and that I'm going to take down in a few minutes so we can all see each other a little bit better. When you saw the communication slide, maybe you were drawn to it by, okay, there's a cool picture of Lieutenant Forsythe and the background of doing cool things in the military. But then as I read about all of these presenters, they are just in amazing fields. And me as a counselor, I know I always have a lot of students that want to go into, something maybe communication related, and they're not sure what it is. We have 3 awesome representatives of that today that are all doing really different things. But if you popped on at the beginning here, I already heard one little connection between the military and more of the business world. Just some kind of little ground rules or whatever for today. I know my students on here have already been to one session, so you know a little bit about how this works. Obviously, because we're in such a big group, you are muted. Use that Q&A feature to ask any questions that you're interested in as we go along. We'll definitely try to weave your questions in as they're appropriate. Mr. Smith and I are monitoring that question and answer, and we'll get them as best we can. Don't worry too much. One of the things that I really love before we get started here, that with communication in general, is yes, we've got 3 people that are doing greatly different things. However, there's a lot of commonalities between them. Obviously, we're talking a broad communications field, so relationships are very important. Being problem solvers is very important. All 3 of these people on here today definitely all have global experience, something that some of you might be like, wow, I want to get out there and travel. And I think they've all done that in lots of different ways throughout their jobs. So I'm definitely really excited for you to hear lots of those things today. And if you come away from this with anything, I'd love you to come away from this and knowing that there are so many more things, I think, that you can get into in your career that you may not just know about yet. And that's okay. That's normal. I wouldn't have known about it at 18 either. And I'm sure Mr. Smith and I are going to learn lots today right along with you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so we can all see each other a little bit better here. Do we want to start off with, I know everybody's in a greatly different field. I'm going to, I guess, take it back to the beginning, and whatever direction you want to go with this is great. What got you started in this field, in the field that you're in, I should say? And anybody who wants to jump in, go right ahead.
Well, I can tell you that actually I was in high school. I actually went to Sandburg for a year.
Oh.
And I love to write. So I would write plays and stories, comics, poems, and things like that. And so when I went to college, though, I went into business. And that was just not for me. And nothing wrong with business. Business is a great skill to have. I just did not have the aptitude for business. And when I was talking to a teacher's assistant, she said, well, why aren't you in communications? And I was like, what is communications? I had no clue. And that's when my eyes opened up. And communications is this huge, huge field where you have television and radio, you have speech writing, you have media relations, public relations and affairs. And it's just vast. And I switched majors my freshman year. I didn't tell my parents till my junior year, but that's when I first came to realize that, hey, this is something I could do. And then after I graduated college, I did my internship at WXRT Radio.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
sure some of you know that station.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it began.
Ms. Forsythe? Oh, sorry.
Nope, go right ahead, Mr. Smith.
Ms. Forsythe?
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Hi, everyone. It's so wonderful to join you today. I'm coming to you from San Diego, California. I am a Navy lieutenant. That's a commissioned officer in the Navy, in the reserves. Actually, I serve in the reserves, but I started my career very differently. So I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps as a combat correspondent. And so I knew specifically what I wanted to do when I joined the Marines. I guess through movies and TV shows, and just growing up noticing some things about the Marine Corps which really attracted me. So first, I wanted to be a Marine, but second, what can I do in the Marine Corps? As a female, obviously I couldn't be infantry at that time, but I always loved photography and I loved taking pictures. I served on the yearbook committee and I loved telling stories. So that was a seed that planted my desire to be a combat photographer. So I joined the Marines, and under this particular job, they call it a military occupational specialty, an MOS, that encompassed radio and television, photojournalism, community relations, and media engagement. And so what I loved about that job, I spent 18 years in the Marines as enlisted from active duty and in the reserves, is that no 2 days were ever the same. And so that was the wonderful way to really learn the craft of communications. I got to go to a lot of different schools within the military and civilian training. So I was very fortunate that the military provided a path for training, which resulted in, actually, when I left active duty, I got numerous job offers to work in TV. And so I spent many years working as a TV reporter, which so it complemented the career nicely before I transitioned into becoming a commissioned officer in the United States Navy as a public affairs officer. Many of the same skills, but managing and supervising the enlisted ranks. And so, and primary job is advising the commanders and the senior leaders. But that was a real nice setup of having really the tactical skills on the ground, serving in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. My first duty station was in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, places like Romania and Poland, just a great deal of deployments, we call them deployments, and exercises that really set me up for success as a public affairs officer. 28 years so far and still continuing to serve. And I can talk more about that later, but that's really what drew me into the service, was a desire to tell the stories, share the courage of the Marines and the service members and the work that they were doing. This was just after Desert Storm in the early 90s, 91, 92. And so through that, my parents encouraged me to go to college initially. But at that time, I just wasn't ready for that. And so the Marine Corps offered a great path to learn a skill and travel. And those were the two things that I really look forward to.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's wonderful to be with you all. Hi, everyone. I'm Greg Noth. I'm joining you here from Washington, D.C. And I never could have planned or expected the path that I've been on in my career ahead of time. I think it really started out in my time at Knox College down in Galesburg, Illinois. And Knox's emphasis on a really strong liberal arts education, which exposes you to all kinds of different fields, but really grounds you in developing, really strong writing skills and critical thinking skills and things that are really broadly applicable no matter what you're going to apply them to. And at Knox, I studied psychology and international relations. Traveled in the Middle East as a student in the Persian Gulf, and from that just kind of knew that I wanted to work on global politics on the Middle East if I could, and moved to Washington just hoping that I'd be able to find something, but not really knowing what exact shape that would take. And so I worked in a think tank, and that was much more of like a journalist job, covering the 2012 presidential election. And then I spent time on Capitol Hill working in the office of a new member from Illinois, Sherry Bustos' office, right when she got elected in early 2013. And that was also a ton of writing, getting, her mail program set up. So when constituents would call or write us letters that we could respond and, develop kind of the positions that the office had on all kinds of different issues of the day. And then after that, I spent about 5.5 years working for a philanthropic foundation, working to spend wealthy donors' money on issues related to economic inequality, mostly in the United States. And that foundation is called the Weiss Foundation. It works a lot on land conservation and climate change, and the organizations and the research groups that I was able to be a part of during that time was just an incredible learning experience. But I kind of felt this itch, that experience in the Middle East that I had really stuck with me. I knew that I eventually wanted to get back to that. And so after kind of a long detour, though it was really enjoyable and I learned a tremendous amount, I decided that I wanted to go back to school. And so just this last May, I graduated from Georgetown with a master's in Arab Studies. So I feel you on the virtual learning thing. I had to do it too. And I know it's tough. I know it's not how we planned it. But hang in there because you'll get through it. But I did that, and ever since I've been at the U.S. Treasury Department, where I started in the Office of Terrorist Financing and Financial Crimes, which works. It's kind of a policy development and implementation office that works on issues like money laundering and financial crime, and works with partners around the world, other governments. People are constantly traveling. And so again, that writing and critical thinking, just the most consistent skill that I've had to draw on. And now I'm kind of just biding my time for a different job with the Treasury Department. But I need a security clearance for it. And so I'm going through a background investigation and trying to be patient with that. But the opportunities that exist in the government for all kinds of different work, basically no matter what you're interested in, I think the government is interested in people that have those talents and those skills. And you can travel the world, you can live anywhere in the country, and it's just a really incredible opportunity. And so definitely echo Lieutenant Forsythe's position that there's just so much good that you can do in ways that just are totally not on your radar screen at all. Yeah.
So all of you guys have worn so many hats. I mean, you guys have done so many things within your field. What do you think is the one thing that maybe like your favorite, or maybe that you learned the most from that has allowed you to put you where you are now? Yeah, that's kind of a tough one.
I would say developing the skill of listening is probably the number one thing that I had to do. And because let me put it this way. Have you ever been having a conversation with a friend of yours and you know what they're going to say and you're already thinking of the response? Mm-hmm. That is not good listening. Waiting till people finish with their complete idea and hearing what they say and processing it and realizing that your response might be something different than what you thought you were going to say because they ended what they said in a way you didn't anticipate. So I had to get very good at listening, and everybody's going to have a boss. You have your parents, then you have your teachers, then you have your employers. Everybody has a boss someday. And anticipating their needs is a really good skill to develop. And you do that by listening. There's not one industry you can go into that listening isn't a great skill to have.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Hi there. I would say if for those who are inclined to have a global mindset, more so now than ever, is that being open to travel and being open to where your company or organization might send you, to really be open to experiencing other cultures. And there's a big world out there, so you definitely want to expand your reach. Like Mr. Noth said, I mean, just there's so many great opportunities. And while America is a wonderful place to be from and live here as your home base, but being open to opportunities outside the United States for travel. And so don't shy away from those opportunities. And that is a skill, to be able to travel effectively and safely and navigate your way in a foreign country, foreign language, with different customs and courtesies, with different cultures, and do it safely and effectively is a skill in itself. And to be able to be effective in your job really takes research and being open and having a mindset of opportunities and growth in that way.
Yeah, I would absolutely echo that, especially the language component. If you want to get out there globally, then having a foreign language in your back pocket is, as tough as that is. I've spent years studying Arabic, and it never feels fluent or anything, but it is. It's incredibly rewarding to be able to, get through a city and, give your taxi driver directions about where you're going. And, that skill will enable you. It just opens a lot of doors if you can communicate in another language. No matter the language, there's always a use for it. And so I would really encourage, foreign language, take your foreign language classes seriously. Because it gets a lot more fun when you get to use it in the world.
Yeah, I was gonna say with that, like, to piggyback on that, what do you feel in high school? Like, what are something that you did in high school that you look at now and say, you know what, I enjoyed that, or maybe like I should have done that more. Like, what can you kind of give kind of insight on that as far as like things, thinking back to high school, like I should have done this more, or I really enjoy this and this has helped me, today.
I should have studied more, studied my foreign languages more. I've been fortunate to travel like Lieutenant Forsythe and Mr. Noth, and I've been to 37 countries, and I can't speak any other language fluently, or even like get by. I used to be able to speak Japanese. I lived in Tokyo, but I forget everything. However, I've noticed that when I do go to a foreign country, I learn how to say, please, thank you, where's the toilet, and may I have a Pepsi, in 4 languages, or in those languages. So, I get by like that, but I would have studied more like Mr. Noth did.
Yeah, and I would say with being in high school, I would say playing sports, organized sports, was important for me, and it set me up for success. To have a coach player mentality when joining the Marine Corps. I played tennis on it, but the important part was on a team with team members and being competitive and having a competitive mindset as well, and being able to take coaching and take playing and winning and losing. Those are some great lessons that you don't necessarily get as an adult, but those are the themes that you will have throughout your life. So if you can get on an organized sports team to participate in any way, or even an intramural or some way to participate in some kind of physical activity of sports, to reduce your screen time and get out there on the field of some kind to play with other kids, and maybe not be in a rush to grow up, but enjoy and savor those opportunities to just play on a field and have those winning moments, and with coaches who really care about you. So that's what I wish I would have done more of, played maybe another sport or done more tournaments or something like that from high school, because those are the themes that really set you up for success emotionally as an adult?
Yeah, I would definitely emphasize like getting involved. I mean, I was a band kid. I was in drumline and really loved it. And you know, thinking back on my high school experience and the people that I'm still friends with and stay in touch with, and you know, the memories that come to mind are you know, from doing those organized activities, and you know, can really be the basis for some lifelong friendships. But in terms of things that I wish I would have done more or less of, I mean, I think looking back, you know, I had good grades and I studied and stuff, but I looking back, 18-year-old me really didn't know anything, and that's totally fine. You know, I was really into English and creative writing at the time. I thought I was going to school for creative writing or literature. That turned out to be wrong. It's still something that I love. I'm a huge reader. But you know, I think the way to get the most out of these years, and as you're thinking about you know, the next steps in your education or career development, that you don't necessarily have to know exactly what the thing you want to do is, but now's the time to be able to develop a lot of the skills and the tools and the habits that are going to enable you to take advantage of those opportunities as they come across your plate. Because when I think of the jobs that I've done, before I started doing them, I really had no idea that they existed. And I never could have, you know, aimed for where I landed 10 years ago and perfectly made it each step of the way. And I found that, you know, through talking with a lot of mentors or people that hired me or bosses who are much further along in their careers, very few of them ever seemed able to picture where they were when they were getting started. And so that's it. There's a lot that's up ahead, and it's exciting and it's anxiety provoking and it's all those things at once. But you know, you don't have to know exactly where you're heading, because part of it really is the journey of getting there.
Mr. Smith, if I can jump in, I've been monitoring our question and answers a little bit. I love, gosh, I love the conversation we've had so far. It's amazing. Questions that students have had have been just amazing as well. I know we're patting ourselves all on the back here, but a couple of questions that came in that were really specific to individual people. Some of you have, many of you have talked about kind of creativity and things like that. The question came in specific to Madonna, but really anybody can answer this, was how to incorporate some of that creative stuff into, my questioner asked, how do I incorporate plays, music, all the things I love into my field in general. So I don't know if any of the three of you have any examples, and I think we've already kind of gone there a little bit, but I thought that was an important point to bring up.
Sure. So writing is a skill that will benefit you in any career that you go into.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about, you know, the writing like of Shakespeare and Carl Sandburg and Mark Twain. I'm talking about concise, getting your point across or your ideas across in a way that doesn't take a lot of time and that will engage your audience. So when you're writing, well, who are you writing for? Who is the play for? What do you want them to get out of it? Who's the story for? What do you want them to learn from it? So thinking about who your audience is anytime. When you're speaking to your parents, the way you tell a story to your parents is different than the way you tell a story to your friends. And so I find that developing my writing skills and looking at different styles of writing too. Newspaper writing is different from magazine writing, which is different from television and radio writing. And so it's developing your writing skills for the type of career you want to go into. If you're going into business or marketing or, you know, international studies, it's all very different. And writing is also quite cultural too. Going back to what Greg and Amy both said, you know, experiencing other cultures also comes through in their writing as well. So that's how you can incorporate your love of writing, is by actually studying and doing, and then it'll pay off in any career that you choose. If you choose to be a fireman, you're going to have to write reports. That's a different style of writing as well. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'm
go
glad
ahead.
you said that. Go ahead.
No, you, all you.
I was going to say, like, as a teacher, I think one of the biggest things that I struggle with or try to encourage kids to do is make sure they're able to be a good communicator. Because like you said, like, it doesn't matter whether you're, you're a CEO or you're a cashier, you have to be able to communicate, what you want to other people. So we talk about this communication piece, like why is this so important to high school kids? Why do they need to have this skill to be able to be successful in the field they want to go to in the future?
Well, I mean, I think just at its most basic point, that the ability to get your thoughts across in writing is really important. I mean, from whether it's writing a resume or a cover letter to get a job, the ability to capture your thoughts and communicate them clearly, whether that's in academic writing, which I had to kind of sort of relearn how to do in my master's program, or whether you're writing a memo, or the writing style at Treasury would be a lot more succinct and direct. So I mean, every place you are has kind of a different style, whether you're writing a news report or a letter for a member of Congress, or a big grant report. I mean, every organization has their own kind of cultural style and emphasis that plays to who the audience is, like Madonna mentioned. And you have to be able to navigate that. And some of that is about understanding, other parties' perspectives. Is this for my boss? Is this for a colleague? Is this for someone at another organization? And so you do have to be able to kind of toggle back and forth between, or is this even just an email? Maybe it's not a big formal written product, but that you can waste so much time sending worthless emails back and forth if people aren't clear about what they want or what they're asking, or and so that language skill, that clarity is just key to getting through the world in a very basic setting.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Ms. Forsythe, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think some of the core fundamentals of the communication field are, you have to be a people person. And I was just checking some of the chat. Some folks were saying, like, what are the skills? Or I don't like people, or, so you kind of have to be a people person and really love stories and love people and be interested, and being able to engage with people, to understand where they're coming from, and being able to provide advice to your leadership. And but so as we're all communicators nowadays, where everyone has their own communication devices, and so more so than ever, and regardless of your field that you go into, particular attention to your communication style and accuracy. And I teach a lot of this with misinformation, disinformation, malinformation. Understanding our information environment is really critical to understanding the world we live in. And so at your age right now with the students, they've grown up on screens, but what we're all discovering is that as we protect our brands and we communicate on behalf of our organizations, is that there are forces out there that we have to be aware of, and identifying fake news, understanding that there are issues out there that we are trying to discern between real and fake. So having that skill to look online, make those determinations, what am I reading? Is it real? So using your social media as listening platforms to make best decisions. Am I going to repost this? Is it safe? Is it even real? And so a lot of times we struggle with this within the military of there's a lot of scams out there. So we help train people on identifying misinformation and disinformation, fake news, really, and how to keep people safe from catfishing scams and some other things that are going on out there. So that's become really the last year or two has been a real focus for us to try to help our workforce not get trapped into some scams online, but identifying and navigating what are real messages and what are fake messages. So some of those things, if that was the question of what are the tangible skills that we should be learning and sharing and communicating, those are the things that I think the next generation are really going to have to be really good at, and fine tuning those abilities to take what they see on the internet and interpret it and be able to deliver a richer communications for their organizations.
Great.
So, yeah.
Ms. Golden, you have another question?
Yeah, you know what I did see in the chat as well. It really, Amy and Greg were, I feel like, getting very similar questions, but related to their own fields. They sent parts of this, I think we've already answered. Both of you, Amy and Greg, the kids were looking for, how'd you get in? How'd you get started? Amy, I know they were saying, is there a difference between, I'm interested, should I do active duty? Should I do reserve? And Greg, students were asking, how did you even get into the Treasury? How, what is it like to work there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, getting into the federal government can just, it's a terrible website called usajobs.gov, and it is basically all executive agency jobs with some exceptions, and it's a big, like, really unworkable portal system.
It is horrible.
Yeah, and it, just you kind of toil in there for a while, and so even my internship at Treasury was through that system, and what I would really suggest is your career offices at your high school and when you get to college, your career services offices, those places are really incredible resources, and you should go and bother them as much as you find helpful, because they really do want to help you. And for things like internships or job placements, they're really key for that, and really, really helpful in terms of writing or reviewing cover letters, or in some cases, like I also much earlier interned with the U.S. Congress, and because it was in the House of Representatives, there's an office in all 435 districts, so you don't have to be in Washington, D.C. All of those members of Congress, they have what they call district offices that are in their hometowns, and so connecting, and that can be a really easy way to connect with a congressional office, because there's one, if it's not exactly in your city, there's one not far from it. And, they are always looking for people that are on the ground, but it can also be a really good way to make the jump to Washington if you want to come out to DC. The office that I worked in was the one that represented Knox College, was in Sherry Bustos district. And so, I was able to use my local connection, because I had lived there for 4 years, as a way to get in the door here in Washington. And so, I know it's not a hugely satisfactory answer, because getting into the federal government is tough, but that there's kind of the only way to do it. And if you have access to career counselors or career services, they are really, really helpful, and they're there for you. So don't think of it as a chore. They're there to help you.
Awesome. Thank you.
And if I may jump in there on, I see a lot of
Mhm.
questions in the chat about getting
Mhm.
started. And so some of the students may have questions. Should I enlist first? Should I go to college first? Should I join the reserves and go through college? And so my path led me to enlisting first. And then I took college while I was on active duty. And back then they didn't have online college, so I had to go at night or on the weekends. I kind of did it the hard way. But so it depends on your path. If I just wasn't ready for a full-time college,
Mhm.
but once I did, I finished, I went and I got my bachelor's degree, and then I went on to get my master's degree. And so I used the GI Bill, which was a benefit of having served on active duty. For me, that was the best path. I would not have changed it the way I did that, but because I was learning and working at the same time. And then I was kind of consider myself like a late bloomer. So I wasn't a very good student. So I didn't really get the best grades. And I went to all girls private school where everyone was really competitive and really smart. And I was kind of at the lower rung of the grade point average. But that's okay, because I did fine in college later in life because I was, one, paying for it on my own. And I had already had so much life experience that some of the coursework was really simple for me because it was, I'd already done an experience and had all the work experience. So the coursework was easy. So it just depends on what's best suited for you. And then the military has commissioning programs. So if you enlist in the reserves and work your way through college, or enlist for 4 years, then you can go on to college, use the GI Bill, and then you can apply for a commissioning program where you become a commissioned officer. And so the difference between enlisting and a commission is that a commissioned officer has to have a bachelor's degree, and you're more in a supervisory role and an advisor to the commander, and you have more responsibilities. The pay is much more, but you do definitely have a lot more responsibility and authority. And so there are different pathways to do that. You can go to college first and then seek a commission, or you can do what a lot of people do. They enlist, go through the reserves and work their way through college, and then go to a commissioning path. So it depends on what's best for you, what your financial situation is, or if, financially or mentally, however you're ready for what experience you want first. 4 years is really a blink of an eye. So if you spent 4 years on active duty and then transition to your college education between 22 to 26, and then maybe you're ready for a full-time career or a commissioning. Or you can stay in the reserves and continue to serve. And so there's a lot of different pathways. And so for me, that worked out great because I still accomplished my goals of serving as an enlisted Marine and got to deploy to Iraq and Afghanistan and a bunch of great places where I gained tremendous experience, got my college done, and now moved into the commissioned officer realm. Still working in public affairs in the reserves, but I transitioned to a civilian career working in communication and media. So I hope that answers your questions.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
I'd like to add on, for those of you who are thinking of communications as a field, you have ample opportunity to try it out. Moraine Valley, this District 230 is in Moraine Valley, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Moraine Valley has a great associate's program in communications, and try out a summer class. Why not? You have nothing to lose. But you can go 2 years for your associate's degree. If you like communications, you can continue on to a 4-year school. If you don't, you can always change your mind as well. But it's a really good option for if you're still trying to decide what you want to do.
Yeah, and actually, with that, I was going to say, I think one of the things that some kids kind of struggle with is, well, what happens if I mess up? Like, I think you said before, you chose business and you changed it, or like you went, like if you had, did enlisting, Ms. Forsythe, and then it didn't work, like, what are you going to do next? So at what point, was there a point in your life where you struggled, where you stumbled and you fell, And how'd you get back up? Like, what did you do to get back on the path, or, wherever it may be, or maybe it's a time right now that, you're kind of struggling or something. How can you kind of help someone who may struggle in the future, how to get over that little hump there?
I spent my 20s struggling. Yes, it was because I knew this was what I wanted to do. And I just kept at it. It doesn't work out. You make a plan, you move on. And messing up is just a mistake. That's all. It hurts, and it sometimes you might feel embarrassed or something like that. I had to move home when I was 27 because there was a recession on and I couldn't find a job, and that was okay. I didn't murder anyone. I made a mistake. And so I picked up the pieces and put my tail between my legs and said, I need help. And my mom was like, I'm sending you money to put gas in the car, drive home. I was living in California at the time, but there were no jobs. I couldn't find a job. And so I moved home, I waitressed, but I kept looking, and I eventually did find something. One of the things that I think is very important as you prepare for a career, and you can start doing this now in high school, is pull together a portfolio. So I had put together a portfolio of my work. And even though I was out of a job for 9 months or something like that, when I finally did get an interview, I had a portfolio of work that I could show them to, and they understood. Employers understand, today, look at what we're going through today. This is cyclical. It happens all the time, at least in my career, it seems very cyclical. And so if you mess up, it's okay. The point is you tried, and keep trying.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with all of that. And I think also, it's important to trust yourself. I mean, when I knew it was time to leave my job in philanthropy and go back to school, that was just a voice in my head that, wasn't particularly, happy, or I knew that what I was doing wasn't what I really wanted to be doing. So trust yourself when you start to get that feeling or hear that voice in the back of your head that says, well, wait, didn't you want to do something else? And then you can take steps to make that change. But it's very rare that you're going to be locked into a decision that there is no path out of. Just trust yourself.
Awesome. I think with that also, as far as we talked a little bit about making connections. I think in all you guys' jobs, you've done so many things and met so many people. So you've made these connections. How do you think, what was the best way that you found maybe networking, or maybe making those connections, or how have you used those connections to further yourself now?
Well, I can start off with that. So in the last 10 to 12 years or so, with the rise of social media, it's just been amazing. So before that, you can imagine trying to stay in touch with someone by letters or by phone call. But now it's just a great way to, if you meet someone on a deployment or a project, and then stay closely tied with them through LinkedIn, social media, obviously Twitter, Facebook. Those are some great tools that you can use to stay connected professionally, and each one has its own special niche, if you will. So I definitely recommend that when you're presenting yourself on those social media platforms, you'll want to always have a professional look. Because you, and as communicators, especially if you're going into communication, you represent the organization. And so above everybody else is that your own social media has to reflect those values of the organization or whatever you're representing. So using those tools, I find that if I'm trying to source a story or I need information, or I love sharing job opportunities with my colleagues because it shows that you're a connector, you're an interlocutor, you're helping people achieve their success. And so people often will turn to you for advice if you're the one making the connections for people through social media. I've found that those are great ways to just stay connected but represent your organization, so you become a trusted agent of your organization and of your brand, whatever that brand may be for the time. So and if any of you are out there who are on social media, please, I'd love to connect with you. If you want to connect with me, you can find me easily on Twitter and LinkedIn, Instagram, and I'm on Pinterest. Someone asked how they'd like to increase their vocabulary. Surprisingly, on Pinterest and some other sources out there, it's a great learning tool. So I do love that way to connect with people, not just in person, but using the social media tools available.
Awesome.
I'd like to add to that. Social media are tools. They're great tools. But remember how you present yourself. You are your own brand.
Mhm.
You are the brand of you every single day. And how you present yourself, employers look at LinkedIn. Employers look at Facebook. And so colleges, when they're checking you out, when you're applying, they look at your social media. So is this the kind of person we want to attend our university?
Mhm.
Your profile on social media is very important. I highly recommend a documentary just came out, I think last month. It's called The Social Dilemma.
Oh yeah, great. It's a great one. That's a great one.
Great movie. It talks about how, and it's by the people who created Facebook and Twitter and all, and it talks about how social media works, but also how you can go down the rabbit hole.
Mhm.
And you always want to stay out of the rabbit hole. You never have to want to drink me and all. So I highly recommend you take a look at your profile today. Well, if I was looking at this as a person who didn't know me, am I presenting myself in the best way on Facebook, on Twitter, on Pinterest? I love Pinterest, by the way. And also I'm on LinkedIn, and I got one of my jobs through LinkedIn. I was congratulating somebody else who had just gotten a new job, and she pinged me. She's like, "Oh, hey, nice to hear from you. What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm looking for a job too." She goes, "We're hiring." In 2 weeks, I had an interview. A week later, I was working in London. So,
Wow.
social media is a great tool, but they're only tools, and tools, no matter what they are only as good as the way you use them.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
great.
I would just say in terms of connecting with people, with networking, you don't be afraid to reach out to folks. If there's someone who you want to learn more about their career, you're interested in the place they work, send them a message, or on LinkedIn or email, or because people are usually more willing than you would think to be willing to sit down and talk with you about what they do and how they got to that position. And so, you obviously got to start with what whether that's, your parents' friends, or, people that are connected to your school, or, if you're in college, if it's the Career Center or alumni networks, or all those, those are all good places to start. And, it also helps to know what you're not interested in. Like, you may think you're interested in something, and then when you hear more about what that career is like, and maybe that's not what you thought, and maybe it doesn't sound as good anymore, and that's fine too. That's part of the learning process. It's very iterative, and so don't be afraid to reach out to people. You can find me on LinkedIn, and feel free to shoot me a message too. Be happy to talk about stuff like international studies, or because I see some of the questions about language and things like that. So feel free to reach out. And in my experience, most people have that same mentality, even if it's not advertised. But don't be afraid to ask people questions. And then, as it gets closer to, if you're actually looking at a job somewhere, the one really concrete piece of advice that I have is, once you're not in the kind of broad discussion period, like if like, oh, there's a job at this company or with this office that I know I want, going back to your network with really specific questions for people, do you know anyone that works at this company, or do you know someone in this office, or I've applied for this job, and being able to go back with something really concrete and specific for the people that are in your network, that's usually the way that they can best help you. And so, now you're really early on in your career and just getting started, so you don't have to worry about this kind of immediately. But as you go forward, think about what's a really actionable thing, because most of the time, folks in your network, they don't know exactly everything about your position or what you're looking for. And the more that you can tell them how they can be helpful, then it'll be worth more to their time and for yours.
That's great. I think the one thing I wanted to, and it's the networking thing to me, that piece is so important. I think a lot of kids don't understand, even now, that you can start that process, whether it's internships or whatever. Before we go, I know we have a little bit of time left. There's one question actually I do want to ask. All you guys have achieved success. And again, all of our success is always what we think our success is, but whether it's personal or professional, what's the one thing that you look back and say, you know what, like, I'm very proud of that. Like, I did that. What's that one thing that you can look back on your entire career, again, personal, professional, whatever it may be, you say, you know what, like, through all the things I've done, all the success I've had, like, I did that, and I'm very proud of that.
Well, I'll state the first thing that comes to my mind was after I left active duty. This was right before 9/11, 2001. I produced and I hosted, I created from scratch a lifestyle TV show for my community television network here in San Diego. And so from start to finish, I pretty much had a hand in everything. So it ran for 3 years. And so when you have an idea about something you feel passionate about, if it's your passion project or a project with purpose, those are the most rewarding. And so I was out talking about lifestyle in Oceanside, California, people, places, art, community, dining, sports, and I covered it all in a show. And so that was just a great way to connect with the community, and people really loved it. And it was such a great way to experience the community. So when you have an idea for multimedia, go for it. Like, so it's one thing I was really proud about, is really the concept to completion. So when you have an idea and maybe you need help, you need a team, because public affairs and media is a team sport. Really, there's very few things that you can do on your own. But nowadays you can literally shoot a TV show, write it, produce it, publish it, really in a creative way, all on your own. So if you have ideas for multimedia, don't wait for someone's permission to do it. Just do it. Start, get that experience. And that was just the one thing that I loved doing. I loved working in TV and having such a big hand in it. I wasn't just one of the writers. I booked all my guests. I shot it, edited it, and got it published. And so if you think it, you can do it.
We got about 2 minutes left. Greg, you want to go ahead?
Sure. I mean, graduating with a master's degree from Georgetown
Awesome. Yeah.
has been just it was really tough. I spent the summer before in Jordan just studying Arabic and, kind of going crazy. And so it was hard, it was a lot of work, but I'm really glad I did it, and I'm really proud of it, and made some really incredible friends.
That's a great accomplishment. That's
Mhm.
awesome.
Oh, Greg stole mine because I was going to say going back to school.
Yeah.
Graduating master's degree, especially I never ever had any intention of going back to school, but I studied threat and response management. I'm a
Okay.
crisis. One of my specialties is crisis communications.
Hmm.
So yeah, but that is probably one of my most current achievements that I'm very proud of.
Well, that is outstanding. I know we're running really short on time. I just want to thank you. I think you guys have given us everything. I know the goal was just to be able to get your information out there and help kids go forward. Thank you so much. I know Ms. Golden, you have anything to say?
Absolutely. My apologies, guys. I stepped out of there for a second because I got kicked off through my own computer's fault, nothing else. But thank you so much for the session. Students, I hope you've learned a lot. I really think communications is, like I said, one of those broad fields where you already have some skills in this area. I know a lot of our students speak another language already. How awesome is that? Heck, just by virtue of us being here and listening to some of us that we like to talk, that. But it's a skill, and we got to figure out where it works for us to channel that. But thank you guys so much. I really appreciate all you've done for us today.
Outstanding. Outstanding.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Good night.